All right, guys. Happy you guys could all make it here today. Today we're going to be talking about closing sales over the phone. So anybody that's been watching me for a while or has been following me knows I'm a big fan of in-home sales. Okay, so I want to be super clear here. My position on this is closing and actually getting jobs to move forward with you. All right. Can happen over the phone depending on the type of business that you're running. Okay. So a pure one call close, to me, in my opinion, is somebody that's giving you a deposit and signing a contract. All right. So for the sake of this conversation, some offers, some contractors, it's impossible to do that. All right. So again, somebody with a great amount of detail, like a general contractor or a builder, is not doing a one call close. Okay. It would be very rare. However, all right, super important that we're still paying attention to the relationship we're building in that initial intake call. All right. And a lot of times, and statistics very clearly show it, a lot of times people decide whether they're going to work with us in that first interaction. Okay. And if you doubt me on that, just ask any electrical contractor, plumber, electrician, any service-based business, how important the initial intake call is. Okay. So I want
Mm.
everyone to really think about their offer as we go through this, okay, and how you would apply this. But I'm going to give you guys a good frame of reference. I was just sharing before we jumped on here. I've been put into a minor sales role, picking up for some slack in my own business. And I haven't had the time to actually go out and meet face to face where I would normally always try to make that appointment. And that way I can deal with objections. What we've been had to do is basically get a quote prepared. And then I have to contact the owner and attempt to close this call over the phone. All right. So again, not the most ideal situation, but I've been relatively successful with it. And I'm going to share with you sort of the framework and the strategy that I'm using in order to get myself to that position. Okay. So the one call close, again, just so we're being absolutely clear. All right. This is a call that you are closing in one appointment. Okay. That can be scheduled, that can be non-scheduled, but it's a one call close. All right. And again, for you guys doing a two call where you're taking an intake and or you have multiple steps, I'll make sure that we apply some other strategies for you guys. In the chat box, you guys can pick up the documents that I'm sharing that are going to allow you to follow along with what we're doing in the one call close script. So most contractors believe you can't close a deal without going to site first. What if that belief is costing you thousands every month? Okay. And what I mean by this, all right, is more and more people want speed and convenience and they don't want to meet a salesperson. Okay. And I'm going to repeat that. People do not want to meet a salesperson. Most of the time, as a contractor and with the new age buyer, they've already made a relative decision before they've contacted you, whether they were going to work with you or not. Okay. Has anybody encountered a customer who's already done their research on them and knows a lot about their company and about what they are looking for specifically? Is anyone having that experience with their customers nowadays?
Actually, we got a call today
Hmm.
to Johnny directly, and he's out of office. And the guy came to us. It's actually the building next door to our office suites. It's
Okay.
the government environment of Canada. They are absolutely educated about who we are,
Okay.
and they gave us the reasons why they're leaving their current contractor. And it was
Perfect.
like, guys, we need to not be this.
Right. So this is a perfect example, actually, Sue. So what happens sometimes, all right, in those scenarios, if we aren't trained our frontline staff on the phone, okay, they can put us through a two-step where a customer actually gets lost as a result of our sales process. Okay. And I see this quite regularly, where we're adding too many steps, and we're not identifying really important opportunities right off the bat. So again, in an HVAC company, for example, you have a new customer that's coming in, all right, that has, a new work of business. The indicator in that position, Sue, is that they already know who you are, all right? Do they need to go through meeting a sales rep, doing a long, sales pitch and like going through the normal channels, or can we fast track them at that point and start serving them immediately, right? So again, a part of this is qualifying, but the next part of it is realizing, what your customer is actually looking for, what their actual pain point is. And for the most part, what I'm seeing more and more of is they don't want to meet with somebody. They're much more confident doing making a sale and making a decision if properly presented, right? Over the phone, Zoom, done lots of Zoom calls. That's another great way. I'm considering that the phone as well. All right. For their convenience. Okay. So think about your customer first. If you are presenting a proposal to them and they're a busy, you know, um, lawyer, for example, a busy lawyer that I sold one project to a lawyer this week. So you're a busy lawyer. All right. And you have to take time out of your schedule to come home and meet with a contractor. All right. All you have to do is look at your hourly rate that you bill out as a lawyer. And this one, it was probably 5 to 6 thousand a month, an hour. All right. And that's how much it's worth for him to come and meet me on my schedule. Okay. Versus giving, at least making the offer, at least, again, persuading them to have a convenient meeting with you over Zoom, right? Where he can put it into his schedule. It works for me, works for them. All right. We're now delivering our service or our proposal in a much more convenient way. Okay. What this allows me to do is basically get the best of both worlds. I'm initially being able to present my proposal, deal with objections. I can do presentations. I actually have a better presentation on Zoom than I do in person, just because I'm not having to shuffle through things and show hard copy stuff. And typically, I have a higher closing ratio on Zoom. Okay, so again, not popular for some people, and a lot of the I think a lot of the resistance there is people haven't they haven't gotten over COVID and the shock of having to use Zoom for things. But again, it's still very live and well. A lot of companies, especially corporate companies and stuff, are using it. So I encourage it. Now, if you don't have a Zoom strategy, no problem. All right, we can still do this over the phone. Okay. So was recently working with a fencing contractor in our low ticket offer, and he was producing some pretty bad numbers. I'm going to share those with you because he's allowed me. Doing fences, all right, primarily in subdivisions, had done 30 input person quotes in the month, had a 15% close ratio. Okay, so not very sustainable, lots of hard work, feeling burnt out. You take 30 in-person appointments, all right? Those are being scheduled. That's a lot of time out of your day. That's a lot of time out of your customer's day as well. Okay. So, and they don't necessarily go that much better. All right. So, what's the process? All right. So, to avoid dropping price and competing just on price, all right, this is the biggest problem when you don't meet with somebody or have an in-person call, is that you have to be able to present value. All right. So, the framework here that we're going to use is first discovery, making sure that you're actually talking to a qualified customer. I can't stress it enough. You'll hear me go over that over and over and over again, but your initial um, part of the call needs to be based around discovery. All right. Second part, if we're being clear here, would be to script, right? What questions are we going to ask? Why are we asking those specific questions, which I've included in the resource that I've shared in the chat? All right. And third, offer. Okay. Actually making an offer that makes sense, that fits the customer's problem. All right. So solving their problem, not just pitching, whatever you have at them, right? Actually having a discovery so you know what the problem is, so you can align your offer with their specific problem. Okay. This is critical. If you just start pitching something that doesn't seem to fit or fix their problem, they're just going to simply move on. Okay. So again, asking the right questions, getting the real pain out, and then aligning what you're offering to that pain is going to allow you to make far more closes. All right. So in close, all right, we have to be able to deal with objections. We have to be able to lower resistance. We got to be able to negotiate and have a conversation with somebody that allows us to make that close. Okay. And those are techniques all on their own. that we won't necessarily be covering full out in this call today. Oh, okay. So the one call close framework, again, like I said, we're going to pre-qualify. All right. We're going to follow our 7-step call script, which I'm going to pull up here in 1 second. We're going to go through. All right. We're going to anchor our value. All right. So think of it this way. We're not selling on square footage or number of bundles or length of wire. All right. We're actually selling on the outcome that our customer wants to get from our service. Okay. Very hard to get that outcome or to align with that outcome if you haven't listened and asked the right questions in the process. Okay. So if your customer's real reason, for example, of getting their roof done, and I'll use that one because it's most familiar to me, is not just because they need a new roof and they want to, buy an expensive roof to look good to the neighbors. It's actually because they're concerned about having to replace the roof again in retirement, all right, or possibly being put into the old age home because they're not maintaining their house, all right. How much easier is it for me to align my offer around that pain? Okay. So now I have the real reason and I understand them on a personal level of what they're afraid of. Okay. And believe me, I get these answers all the time. Okay. And I'm actually now helping them to solve a problem. There's a significant difference there. What am I anchoring to? I'm anchoring to their fear of being removed from their home in old age or having to replace the roof again. Okay. And I'm presenting my value around never having to have that fear again. Okay, so if somebody's sincerely believing that and I'm able to properly communicate how I can alleviate them from that, I'm going to do a lot better than the guy that comes in and pitches, any old metal roof at them, right? Why? Because it's a good metal roof. Cool. I do good quality work, right? You see how that's not aligned? That's not really anchoring to the value. That's not really solving a problem. Doesn't everybody do good quality work, right? We also need to make an offer, all right? Therefore, you need to be clear on your offer. You need to articulate your offer in a way that helps to solve their problem, not your problem, not what you perceive their problem to be, their actual problem. And then you need to shut your mouth. Okay? This is where a lot of salespeople fail. This is where a lot of contractors fail, is in that silent moment when you've presented a number or a price. Okay, that they have to fill that gap with noise. They don't allow it to become a little bit awkward. They don't allow a customer to think, all right, and respond to that offer. Okay. Also, there's a lot of communication that gets done either over the phone or in person or on Zoom, all right, in that pause. Okay. So I can't stress it enough. I use it religiously. If you haven't used it in the past, this is a quick win for you today. All right. I want you guys to make your offer, present your price, all right, then shut your mouth and listen. Okay? Don't try and fill the gap with noise. All right? That's only going to increase the sales resistance. Okay? And it's where most guys fail in their sales presentations. Okay? Next step, we want to lock in the next step, deposits, site visit, contracts. Okay? Anybody here think that this is a complicated framework to run? Anybody have any questions about what I'm showing you here? Okay, cool. We'll actually leave the 7-step script till the end. I'm just gonna keep going through to my next one. So, oh, never mind. I take that back. Give me 1 sec. Let me pull this up. All right. All right. So it's not. Can you guys see my screen? Okay. Can't seem to get it to pull up. Everybody seeing okay? Hmm. Okay, so appreciate you making the time for me today. This call is to understand your project, share how we work, and if we are the right fit, talk about the next steps. Sound good? Okay. So in that first statement, that's first opening line, does that sound needy? Does it sound like I need their business? Anybody?
No, it sounds very mutual. This is
Okay.
actually how I approached the call.
Right.
So it's like, I think it came from when we were doing those trial agreements that we had done with you in the beginning there.
Right.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yep, I do.
Let's see if we're a right fit. And then
Totally.
it took the pressure and the weight off of both parties to just enjoy the experience without stressor of either appearances or performance, or it's just let's do what we said we were gonna do.
Right. So in my opinion, and you may have a different one, and that's perfectly okay, but all sales is to me is leadership. All right. We're leading a customer. All right. We're helping them make a decision. We're helping them solve a problem. Okay. So if we are strong leaders, all right, you excel in sales. Okay. And the reason why is that people are coming to you because they have a problem. If they knew how to solve their own problem, they would do it themselves, would they not? Right. Okay. So when they're coming to, they're looking for you to take the lead. They're looking for you to lead them to a good solution. That's the point of them being there. And at the same time, we need to make sure that we are establishing ourselves as an authority, a trustable authority, of course. All right. And a lot of times, again, it's just a quick exchange of words, but you're not coming across as needy. You're not coming across as needing that business. All right. And again, it's just the laws of attraction here. If somebody's, desperate and needy for business, it shows, right? If you're not attached to the outcome, and that's to make a sale, and you're attached to solving a problem, all right, your communication will change. All right. And what you're doing is positioning yourself early on as a trustable authority and somebody that's going to help lead them through a process. Right. It means you have a plan to help them. Okay. So again, when we're asking questions, what got you thinking about this project now? Okay. How long have you lived in your home? Very important. How long are you planning to stay in your home? Okay. And it can go for B2B, the same thing. Again, you can adapt these questions, right? Clarifying what problem they actually have. All right. And I can't stress this enough. If you haven't locked in on their real problem and you haven't got them to open up to you about what is their vision of the problem, not your idea, all right, but theirs. You're going to find it very difficult in the later steps, all right, to make that connection and get them to close, okay? Because you really don't, you're not listening. You're not asking the right questions. You're not bringing out of them what they want to share with you, and therefore you can't possibly be competent enough to solve the problem, all right? So let me give you a very good example of this, guys. And I'll use one just recently. I went to see a very large, beautiful custom home. It was about 30 years old in a really, really high-end area. Again, the gentleman was a lawyer. And when I was at his home, he had said that he had spoken to 4 or 5 roofers that had come by. And I said, okay, great. Totally understand. And I asked him, what was his concerns? Well, none of them have checked the attic. None of them have looked in the attic. Now, okay, all right. And what have they, what are they quoted on basically? What were they looking to get done? Well, we're not quite sure yet. We're concerned because we've had leaks in our ceiling and we're concerned about mold in the ceiling. All right, big huge home. I was like, okay. I went in the attic, and lo and behold, I find a great big a roof full of mold, right? Black mold all over the sheathing, everywhere else for a roofing contractor. That's bad news bears. All right. From that point, I'm able to do a report. All right, report back what I observed. All right, being the only one that went into the attic, I noticed a whole bunch of other things in terms of their leaks. I put that all in a report with a $118,000 quote. Sent it to them. They approved it immediately. All right. What was the difference between me and the 5 roofers that came in before? What was the difference?
You listen to their pain and
Right,
yeah, when to solve the problem.
right. So everyone there came to sell them a roof, and we're attached to the outcome of selling a roof. Now, this isn't a small project, right? This isn't a straightforward, roof. But I listened to them very, very quickly and asked the questions that I needed to ask. Had I not asked that question, all right, I would have never known that they'd had 5 roofers that had been there and no one went into the attic. And their concern was about mold, mildew in the attic. Okay. It wasn't about the roof. The roof to them, a roof's a roof. Okay. So again, you take those opportunities when they're given to you, but if you don't learn to ask the questions earlier to clarify what they believe their problem is, okay, then you are not solving any problems for them. You are presenting a pitch or an offer that's going to go in one year and out the other. Okay? It's not valuable to them. Okay. So we also get this opportunity here. And obviously, I'll use the same example. Okay. I was able to increase urgency to 100 out of 100 out of 10 by presenting them with the facts of what was going on in their attic. All right. Now, you couldn't have handed me an easier sale. All right. Then, you're a lawyer. This is black mold. You have kids. This is a large scale home. Whatever the cost is, let's get it fixed. All right. There was no, like, his urgency was exceeded what mine could be. All right. But again, I found that emotion. Okay. I was able to match the value of my offer by just doing the thorough inspection and going through the roof. All right. Presenting it to him. All right. And his urgency is going to exceed mine. Right. So again, you can find this in other people as well. So when you're asking these questions, what may seem like a bit surface level, it allows you to get deeper with them as well. All right. And even create urgency, right? Once you find the emotions, once you understand what they're actually going on, you can increase the urgency around the offer. Okay. So we want to identify the impact. Okay. How is this affecting your day to day? How important is this to get handled right now? Okay. Again, why are these questions important? Do they have a summer vacation planned? Okay. Are they, do they have kids that are going to be out of school soon and, they want to get it done? There's a whole bunch of things that people might not be telling you unless you ask, right? Again, when you go into, with a family that are living in a home and they're looking at getting a renovation done, all right? What are we going to ask in that situation that helps to bring up that pain, that helps to understand what it is again that their vision is, right? If we're not going to take the time to ask certain questions, all right, we're never going to find out. We're never going to be clear, and therefore we can't present our value. Okay? Remember, like, value is perceived. It's perceived by the person that you're communicating with. If you listen and you take into account these things. So again, they've shared with you, having kids that they want to get a thing done before summer vacation. All right. Is that urgency? Right? What if they shared with you that, they've been thinking about this project for 5 years, right? They finally saved up enough and they have the budget to do the job. What's that telling you? Right? Am I dealing with someone qualified? Of course, right? So again, I can use those things later on in the system, all right, to help close the deal. So while that you're initially going through it, it's very important to understand understand the impact of this change to their lifestyle or to their comfort or the cost, all of those things. And you can do this with B2B, you can do this with anybody. All right. Understanding how, meeting their schedule, if it's a GC, understanding how that would, help them. Understanding how, a certain budget, all of these things are the pieces of the puzzle that you need to present in your offer, in your presentation. Okay. We also need to qualify the project. Okay. So again, can I ask a couple quick questions? Make sure they're a fit before we dive any deeper. All right. Can I ask a couple questions just to make sure we're a fit before we dive any deeper? Okay. So again, I'm almost repeating what I said at the beginning, but I'm reiterating that I hold value. Okay. That I'm not there desperately looking for their work. I want to make sure it's a good fit for both sides. And you know what? I'm confident enough to say if you're not a fit, you're not a fit. Okay. So I'm almost putting them as a trial, right? I'm not sure yet if I can really help you. Do you mind if I ask you a couple more questions? Okay.
Yeah,
So again,
I got a question about that.
certainly.
I'm getting a lot of leads, and a certain percentage of these people expect a free quote.
Sure. So when you're dealing with a free quote, all right, what's important, all right, is that when you get to the point of where you have to deal with that objection, all right, is that you've already built up value that you can attach to. So again, what are they afraid of? What are they, what are they looking for in a contractor? All of these questions are helping you to present your value of why they would come out and, you know, beyond just a free quote. All right. So many, many times, like you'll always get that. And a lot of people use free quotes and stuff as defense. All right. Because the sales resistance high and they'll say, hey, I just want to get a free quote. How many of you guys get guys calling in just saying immediately, I want a free quote? Are your quotes free? Yeah. Okay. So think about the logic behind that. What are they afraid of underneath all that surface? What are they afraid of happening? When someone leads with, I want a free quote, what is their deepest fear and concern?
Being ripped off.
Paying too much, being ripped off, right? And we can attribute that to 50% of the population. Their biggest fear is paying too much for something. Okay. So at that point, you need to create a gap. All right. The gap is created by understanding the other concerns that they have. All right. Timelines, things like this. It all psychologically starts to present a picture in their head. And just think about it. If I'm having a conversation with you and I'm asking some of these questions, all right, versus the guy that's just trying to take their contacts and, yeah, I'll send you a free quote. All right. I've built up so much more rapport. And by the end, I'm leading the conversation. I'm
No,
I'm I'm the one who does the least amount of talking wins.
no,
Right?
my question is,
Sure.
Mrs. Free Quote wants a 13 by 13 patio and only wants to pay PGG pricing.
Perfect. So
No,
right
no, no.
away
My,
you've
my point is,
disqualified them. There's no,
yeah. So when you go to disqualify them,
yeah,
they're a little bit pissed off.
sure. Right. So again, you in that situation though, you were clear with them up front. So I started off saying, I'm not sure that we're a fit yet. Let me find out. And again, at the end of that conversation, yeah, they may be a little rubbed or pissed off, but what you're doing is the right, like again, you can't qualify everybody. Right? So, but you made the statement when you started the call. Okay? You'll see two things happen. They're going to thank you and be pissed off and hang up. That's a good thing, right? That means they're really just one of those people looking for the cheapest quote and all that, or they're going to engage with you. All right? And they may, well, what do you mean? Right? And you may have gotten those as well, right? When you turn them back and like, whoa, before we, offer any free quotes, let me make sure that we're a good fit. Right? So I'm not saying I'm willing to work with you or not, right? Again, you're
Well,
raising you're raising your perceived value immediately as a person.
what I found, in addition to that, I'd be like, hey, you know what? Like, I love to help. We're always looking for business. It's just I think we might be too expensive or not the best fit for you on this type of
Mhm.
project.
Sure.
You might
Yeah.
want to call XYZ company.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, just send it to your competitor. I do it all the time. All the time. So, and they think it's great, and I listen. That's what we do, right? So, and again, there are some guys that serve in a better marketplace, so that's the right move. And be confident enough in yourself to say no, right? So, as you get more mature as a contractor, you realize saying no is more important than saying yes.
I'm starting to realize that.
What's that? Yeah. So, no is the most powerful word, the most, because again, if you say yes to everything, we all start off just saying yes to everything, don't we? We all start off being that guy, and not everybody fits what we want to offer, right? The quality we want to offer, the value that we bring. Only a few, and again, only a certain percentage of the population is going to fit well with your company. It's up to you at this point to be able to qualify them. That's the whole point of this, right? So again, an ideal start time. That's a very big clue, right? We're looking for red flags here. I can get it done whenever. Cool. You want a free quote? Can get that done whenever? Do you have a budget? Do you have a rough investment range in mind?
How long are you going to be in the house for?
Right? How long have you been in the home for? Exactly, right? You're getting it. So are you the main decision maker or is it someone else involved? Okay? So again, these are all qualifying questions and you can adapt them for your specific offer, but the sooner we have that conversation and the sooner that we can identify if somebody's going to fit or not, all right, you're saving both them and you time. Okay. Some of the worst reviews that I have on my Google thing are from people that we refuse to do business with. Right. So again, take that into thing. We never did business with them. We refused to do it because they didn't qualify. They didn't fit. Okay. And that's going to happen. But I much rather those reviews than, ones that where we went in with, Karen and she just was a nightmare to deal with and still gave us a bad review. Right. So we can all identify those customers. The more and more you become established with this stuff, you'll identify them right away and just think of the person you don't want to deal with. Think of your worst customer, the worst outcome, right? Was there ever a point where you knew in your gut that this isn't the right guy? Probably. Probably pretty early, right?
Yeah, yeah.
How,
Right?
how would you
So
reply to those type of reviews?
Say it again.
How would you reply to those type of reviews?
You point out the insane part of it. Like, I'm sorry, Mrs. So and so, but we have a standard that we keep. All right. We were unable to qualify you as a customer, and we apologize and hope for the best. Right? That's all you can do. So, and again, you can get those removed too. So, but I've left mine up. If you go to my Google, you'll see them because they're hilarious. People just rip on them. Like you called in and like you did, like we refused you a quote, so you gave me a bad review. Like that's not, nobody's really taking that as a mark against the business, right? So, and Google will remove those because you never had any business, right? You are allowed to say no to your customers. Okay? We're not a hospital. We can turn away whoever we want.
Can
Okay?
you use
So
a pre-qualifying question like to give people a range of prices?
it could be it for a
So
number.
let's just say it could be 4 to 7,000 depending on degree of difficulty, or give so that way if they say, well, that's way more than I expected, you've already
Mhm.
figured it out, right?
It's
Like,
also where you price condition, right?
yeah,
So again, it's very, very important. And it's so important. Even when you're doing, let's say you're doing a one call close, the structure of the system doesn't change. Okay, because these are lead into things. And in fact, it becomes a little bit more efficient. Once you get them qualified, all right, now we can move them and make sure that they're the right fit for the business. Now it's even easier to start to go into position for the close, right? So again, let's call this your presentation or positions of your solution. Okay. So if you're selling HVAC service over the phone, okay, that's a popular electrical service. You're selling, I mean, you can sell paid quotes. All right. I don't know if any of you guys are doing that here. We certainly do. We sell paid quotes, right? Somebody wants a
They
big
charge money
project
to go out and do
estimated,
nothing.
and looked at, and we're we're really, really busy. We get into the position where we sell them a quoting package. We sell them, management services. Okay, so can you guys. Oh, I lose my screen here. All right. So again, for GCs, you shouldn't be doing GCs, especially that have got wide range of scope. You should not be doing those things for free. Okay, design, things like that. Like we don't offer those things for free. All right, that's a great way to attract yourself a bunch of freebie takers and people that are just generally going to waste your time that aren't in the position to actually want to get a job done. Okay. So explaining your process, explaining, how your company works, being clear with the steps that they need to take in order to have their problem solved. All right. So here's how we typically handle projects like yours, right? We do a site review of the drawings if needed. All right. Detailed scope, firm quote, deposit, schedule, and start date. All right. Focus on quality communication and delivering what we promise. That's why we're not the cheapest, but we're often the last contractor your clients will ever call, or the last contractor you'll ever call, our clients will ever call. Okay. So I'm making a bit of a statement there that can be perceived as a statement, and it may be slightly questioned, but you are using your confidence to explain your process, right? And again, I'm using a very simple example here. All right. But oftentimes, again, we need to think about the steps of presenting how we solve the problem to our customer, positioning our solution. Okay. All right, so now we need to handle the last part, which is handling the objection. Okay. And again, if you really think about where sales fall apart, I would say the majority of them fall apart in the objection handling. Okay. Two reasons why objection handling is hard and stressful for most people. A, they don't ask the right questions early enough to leverage on things that the customer has said, all right, to align themselves with value. All right. Two, they just generally don't, they can't handle a rejection. Okay. Oftentimes the conversation ends right there, and that's a shame. Okay. We can't allow the first objection that comes out of our customer's mouth as being, the end of the thing. You've spent time, you've spent effort. All right. Your customer also isn't necessarily saying no. All right. They're saying not yet. Okay, means you still have work to do. You still have, they still have questions. They still aren't sure. There's a million things there can be. All right, but don't give up on the first no. All right, don't give up there, especially if you get good at digging for information. You'll have less objections, but you'll absolutely know how to handle those objections. All right. So first thing is, and again, you guys must be getting sick of me saying it, but we're always going to start with agreeing with whatever they told us. Right? We want to neutralize, bring down the sales resistance. All right. Do not immediately start to explain why. Okay. Don't start to be that comes off as combative. That comes off as pushy. That comes off as, again, that's going to raise your customer's sales resistance subconsciously, and they're not going to want to deal with you. They want to get rid of you quickly. Okay. So our first step here, all right, we're going to need to slow down, use a little bit of tonality, and that's totally fair, right? Totally agree with you. Yeah, you know what? I've heard that a few times. Our price is a bit high. Totally agree with you. All right, before I go into handling that objection. All right, now what I want to make sure of is that I am separating the objections. I am dealing with a pure objection and not an objection that's another one, for example, right? So again, if you're dealing with a purely price objection, you can deal with it, with different strategies, okay? But if you're actually dealing with an uncertainty objection and you've taken at face value that they've given you a price objection, okay, then whatever you say next is just going to continue to raise the sales resistance, okay? So if they're really just like, I don't want to work with this guy, like he seems shady, all right, they're gonna be like, yeah, you know what, your price is too high, right? If I just perceive that price objection as being, oh, well, then I'll just lower my price. I've actually made the objection worse. I've actually created even more doubt, right? When I start discounting, I'm basically telling them I'm desperate for work. I need this work. I'm not trustable. Okay. It happens way too often. And even good contractors make these mistakes. Okay. Even guys that have good value, maybe had a bad exchange. There may be any number of things. Okay. People are strange. All right. But what's really important is that we separate those things and make sure that we're truly dealing with, whatever objection they've given us. So again, a good example of this is, hey, totally get it. You know, I've been told that our prices are really high. But, money aside for a second, are you really sure that I could even deliver your roof for you, deliver your HVAC? Are you even sure that we're the company to deliver this for you? Yeah. Okay, why? Have them repeat back why, right? Now we know that they're sure that we could do the work. It's just 100% a price objection, right? They just don't have the money. They don't have the money yet. They don't like now you can deal with that. Okay? But if you don't ask the right questions around that, all right, you're going to find yourself having really quick, objection handles where they don't even give you a chance to discuss it and they're gone. Okay. Oh, I just need to speak to my spouse or this, I'll call you back. We'll get back to you soon. All that kind of stuff. That's because you've triggered resistance, right? You've triggered something there that has allowed them to stop and you have to get to the bottom of it. Okay. So the other thing is, earlier you said that sounds really expensive compared to what? Let's walk through what's included. Okay. Let's go back through. What are we comparing to though? Maybe you have another quote. Maybe you've gotten another price, right? We want to try and negotiate at that point. We want to understand where that fear or resistance is coming from. Okay. I need to think about it. Is that a budget thing or is that a timing thing? Okay, so again, I'm trying to separate my objections. I'm trying to make sure that I'm dealing with a pure objection versus, something that might be masked. Nowadays, people are, and more, I don't understand it, but people are less and less inclined to tell you the actual truth, right? How many of your customers do you feel are just being nice and kind, and they're not telling you the truth? How many of you have that experience? Right? Anybody been at a really like they thought they were going to close their sale for sure, that people were giving them all the signs, all the everything, smiling, good body language, and then all of a sudden they're like, "Yep, I'm going to just give me a day and I'm going to get right back to you." Gone. Ghosted. Never hear from them again. Okay? Guys, you've got to understand that we are in a different time nowadays. Like that is the majority of people now. Like again, ghosting is normal, right? How many of you guys probably got people on your phone right now you're ghosting, right? That annoying sales rep, your wife, who knows, right? You're just not responding. Like that's acceptable in society now. So why is it so important that we have enough conversation there to keep it going, keep it moving, all right, and moving them to the yes, all right? Because if you let it go here, all right, most of the time it's never coming back, all right? You're not going to win them over in follow up or anything along those lines either. Okay. So again, be clear about how you will handle every objection that you're getting, right? So, understand what your customer is going to say, and all of you can probably come up with the same 5 objections. All right. Out of curiosity here, maybe give me a 1 in the chat. How many of you guys have practiced your objection handling? How many here have actually practiced with your team objection handling? Anybody have written scripts? Give me a 1 in the chat. Anybody have a plan to how to handle an objection when they receive one? Okay, Siavash, good. Okay, so let me maybe put it into perspective here, guys. If you had closed 25% more of the quotes or opportunities that you got last year, what would your business look like?
I would raise my prices. That's what I would have done.
For sure, right? We'd be in demand, right? So anybody that's had a slow year or is getting started or anything else, there's no better place to invest your time, your energy, okay, in managing objections, okay? Again, if I'm trying to fast track somebody to business success, the easiest way is not more leads, not more opportunities. Close the ones you have. Close the ones that you've got and close them at the price that you deserve to be paid, right? So again, a lot of times we mistake a marketing problem as actually a sales problem or a sales problem as a marketing problem, right? Only when you put the time in, and again, I'm going to stress this to you, if you don't become at least knowledgeable in how sales are made and the system that we use to close, it's going to be near impossible for you to attract talent for someone else to do that job for you later. Okay. It sucks. Hey, listen, if you don't like sales, I get all that. No problem. Some of us, the excuses I get all the time is I'm a trades guy, work with my hands, all these things, right? They're all excuses. There's not a better skill you can build in life, period. All right. In terms of building your career than to learn how to communicate with people and how to make sales. Okay. Again, it'll follow you all the way through your business. It'll follow you through into every square inch of it. All right. So I can't stress this enough. We all need to invest in our sales process and our system, right? Especially if you're generating leads. Okay. Any questions before I move on from this? Anybody confused? No? All pretty straightforward?
Yo, what's up, dude?
Hey, let's go.
Sorry I'm late.
Yeah, no problem.
It's going. I'm getting back.
Good.
I just went and looked at a job. So,
Great. Did you close it?
not like that, but yeah,
Okay.
it's some hourly carpentry work for a guy. So I took
Gotcha.
it. Just random stuff. His carpenters are behind, blah, blah, blah.
Mhm.
We did stair treads for him. 2 days. It was like 21 hours. We made $1,100.
It's good. It's good.
So it's a start. It came out to $50 an hour.
Okay.
So that was sweet.
Right on.
Like I said, it's a start. We didn't have time to do those videos this week, but we're gonna do them. We're out of town next week, so I got
Okay.
training, so we'll probably shoot for next weekend.
Okay. Well, let's catch up on that
And
after
then
this call, Chris. We'll catch up
okay,
on that in a sec. So, I want to share with you again, especially, and we can even take this down a notch for anybody that's selling service-based contracts, sales under 6K, I'm going to say, okay? A lot of you can probably sell more over the phone, all right? Keeping in mind people's speed and convenience, right? Proposals, having a good system in place for presenting a proposal. Actually, I was just talking with Greg this morning. We were talking about this particular thing, where we can actually even text out a multiple option quote, right? So you can text your customer, jump on the phone with them real quick. All right. Does that require you to have a face-to-face meeting when you're discussing something that, again, going through the framework, using the system here? No. Okay. They're able to make a pretty easy decision out there, especially if you understood their concerns, understood their fears, and you've given them that proposal. We're able to do those closes over the phone. Service, stuff like that. Like again, these are all one call close opportunities. Selling your proposal, you're, building a scope of work for someone. Those are all opportunities to sell over the phone in one call. Okay. So again, when you put this together, and if you're using even this simple framework adapted for your own business, all right, I can say and safely say, you're going to see a dramatic increase in your sales closing, right? Just follow that simple framework, right? Keep to it, write a proper script for your offer, okay? And you're going to see a dramatic increase in savings in time, a happier customer, all right? Less tire kickers, higher margins. Okay. And that's because we have a process, we have a system. All right. We're not coming off as being needy or unprofessional. Okay. We're getting to people's core problems and we're solving them in a very short period of time. Okay. Do you think anybody wants to go through 2 hour presentation for, in-home presentation where you just grill them? Do you think anybody's into that anymore? No. Okay. They don't want salespeople. They want to get the quote. They want to have the information they need to make a decision. All right. A lot of that can be done now over the phone, over Zoom, stuff like that. So I encourage you all to try and consider that as being an option for your business. And if anything at all, that we're using a qualifying script, we're still following these same steps if we're doing a two-call close. Okay. Anytime you get in front of anyone, you can be doing this, right? So, what's our quick wins for today and how can we apply them? So, build your discovery questions list. All right. Can't stress it enough, guys. Practice these things. Practice these things. Don't just throw them on a page and, not follow them. All right. We got to actually practice them. For anyone that's interested, we have some role play calls where you're more than welcome to come out and actually practice your script. Much cheaper to practice it in front of people that aren't buying your services than it is to practice it in front of people that are buying your services. All right, those mistakes are very expensive. So I encourage everybody to role play their scripts, get through their sales process. All right, get feedback on it, and that's where you're going to see improvement. All right. Convert your next quote into a phone call. Again, you know, rather than driving out and seeing every single lead that you have. All right. Are they even qualified? What qualifies them? Can we sell them over the phone? I want you guys to try and sell your next quote. Okay. Practice this close. If it sounds like we're a fit, we'll book the next step. Fair? All right. Just add that into it. If it sounds like we're a fit, we'll book the next step. Fair? Okay, add that into starting all these conversations. Okay, make yourself
I
the
really
prize.
like that.
Absolutely. Again, I add it like I've taken it out of my own stuff that I do just automatically, and it immediately sets the tone, right? It elevates you as a salesperson and it tells your customer that you're not just, there trying to sell them, products and services, right? You actually have an evaluation, you have a system. So I can't, again, just add that one thing and you're going to see a big difference, right? So anybody here currently closing over the phone? Give me a one in the chat just so I know how many are actually closing over the phone. Oh, I know Greg is. Okay. So nobody yet. Cool. Right. So want to make an offer. Anybody that's new to our group. All right. You can book a free sales script audit. We'll go through your sales process. I'll give you some feedback, let you know if you need any areas of improvement. All right. Happy to review, what's working, what's not working. Quick chat, no obligation there, of course. And again, for you guys to understand who these best fit, they can basically be everybody, right? So we've kind of gone through a couple scenarios. Um, almost everybody, I'm not going to say absolutely everyone can do a one phone call close, and it does take some time to get pretty good at. Is there anybody on here that's wondering if they could do it for their offer? Would love to open the floor and we can discuss that. Anybody not think that the one call close could work for their offer specifically?
I don't.
You don't? Okay. So what is it you're offering?
Well, we offer services. We're an industrial company.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we do services, and closing an offer over the phone, right, generally doesn't work for us.
Okay, so
The problem being that, some of this is very technical, and you need all the information done via email. It has to be reported back to engineers, etc. I've got a non-solicitation confidentiality with the company, so I can't really discuss too much about them. But they're very difficult generally to deal with.
Okay, so do you mind if I share some insight on that?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so first things first, in terms of qualifying somebody, right? And you're going to go out and do all of this work, collect all this information from them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are you being paid for that?
No, that's another issue.
Okay. That would be the bigger issue is like, again, if you were a professional and this sounds complicated, you're doing commercial services, there should never be a time or place where you're not being paid to be called out, right? Why would you share your expertise without a fee? Like no one works for free.
But generally out here in the West Coast, right, in Canada, this is the issue, is that we're expected to be giving out tenders, information, documentation before the tender's even accepted or the job is accepted. We are the certified company for the Lower Mainland, and there's a ton of expertise that goes into that. They simply don't pay it, and now they're subcontracting it out to India and using our drawings. So I'm very upset with that portion. Right.
So again, and depending on your size and position, you can be the breath of change, because I can assure you that it's not feasible to give away services. You can't afford to work for free, right? So if they're asking you to come out and do those things, aside from low, like if you're doing maybe tendered work or government public work where that's just again that's mandated. There should, like anything private, B2B, B2C, you should be introducing a call out fee for sure, right? And if anything, it's going to weed through the guys that are just looking for a price, that are going to, price shop you.
That happens all the time in this industry. I don't know how to correct the situation.
Well, that's how you correct it.
I've been doing this for 25 years.
Sure. So, but that's how I'm explaining how you correct it. You stop doing it, right? So, I mean, just because everyone else is doing it doesn't mean, like, you got to understand, like, how do people perceive value? What's the value in free? What's the value of free?
There's no value in free, but there is on the one side. If you don't do it and submit the documentation, you don't get the work.
Okay. So, but again, I bring you back to the point I'm trying to make here, right? If it's a B2B situation and you have a customer that's trying to acquire services, right? Now you just explained to me that there's lots of guys running around that are inferior, right? That are not giving the
Absolutely.
same. Okay, cool. So, what says that I'm an expert and that I have value than charging a fee?
It certainly sounds good on the outside of things, but reality is that if you're not doing that, you're not getting the work. That's
Okay.
just the way it works
Okay.
out here. So,
All
I
right.
mean, I agree with you. Like in other countries, they pay you for your submissions, they pay you for your expertise, right? All the way down the line.
Okay,
Um,
so again, the fallback here, right? Like you have a reputation, right?
right.
People respect you in your business and your industry.
Mhm.
Okay. So the customers that were planning to work with you anyways, all right, if you gave a refundable, fee, and would that not just push away the ones that just continue to use you for pricing?
If you ask for a refundable fee, they just they'd cut you loose. You wouldn't even be getting through the door.
Okay. So again, that seems rare to me.
It,
I've certainly am aware of that, going on in the commercial side for sure, and I'm not, downplaying the severity of it. But at a certain point, you need to ask yourself, like again, and this would only be by knowing your numbers, by knowing, your position. But there comes a time when every contractor, even if you've been doing it 25 years, there where we have to make a change, right? So I'll give you a good example of this if you don't mind.
no problem. I'm listening.
Okay, so I'm a roofing contractor, right? Just a dumb roofing contractor, but no one believes me when I say that I charge for my estimates. Okay. So, I mean, you think about roofing, that's what everybody does. Nobody charges for an estimate. That's the going thing. All right. Now, what I learned and what I've implemented is the people that expect you to work for free, all right, business, anything else, like it doesn't matter. Okay. The ones that expect you to work for free aren't your customers. Okay, those are the ones that are going to be tire kicks. Now, the ones that you shock a little bit with adding a fee, yeah, it takes some salesmanship to present the value of that, right? So again, it's not just saying I have a fee now and stopping at that. It's explaining what the fee is for, right? It's having the courage and the confidence to say, hey, listen, I'm going to send out a, fully licensed technician that's going to gather all the information and assess your current situation so that we can, expedite your project. This is more of a way of managing the project. And it's this fee if it gets refunded. And again, that might be hacking that to death, but maybe you need to present a better value because the customer that is already, choosing you, that's just adding value, right? You're just differentiating yourself from everyone else.
Um, I know it sounds good what you're saying, but my
Okay.
understanding is that I'm being fair with you too.
Sure.
Generally speaking, we run all trades, millwrights, welders, plumbers, electricians,
Hmm.
industrial engineering projects, from the bottom to the top.
Okay.
I don't know one time other, with exception of engineering or setting up the site to verify that's happened. Even though, it's just the way it is out here. And I think that it may be detrimental to our side of things if we started to ask. I know it would be. Especially specifically that we usually deal with crown corporations, right?
Okay.
So,
So if it's a crown corporation, again, like they have mandates against that, but that would be a different scenario, right? That's public work.
right,
Right.
right. So that's generally our bread and butter for 25 years. So my question is this:
Sure.
you said that they had mandates against charging for that, but they also have mandates. They also have mandates if you're doing design drawings. So part of the curriculum that they ask for is that you provide them when you submit a drawing on the tender process, that drawing be submitted to meet X, Y, and Z. So we won the project supporting contractor of the year for energy of North America, right?
Okay.
And this particular project, after we basically saved the project, not even one of the big boys could do it. Much larger than us. We did it all by hand, did a design from the start. Then they sent it out to India. This is an example. Now India is able to do this product based off of our drawings, but their prerequisite asked us to release the documentation after all hard work. And this is what upsets me.
Yeah.
I'm actually trying to step away from them and move in another direction. But
100%. I
uh,
mean,
I just
again,
I just feel like all the effort's been put in,
yeah.
and we're not getting the respect that we deserve at the end of the day.
So you again, I know it's difficult sometimes to see perspective when you've done something, a certain way and everyone's doing it a certain way, but all it takes is one person to change that. And again, I'm not bullshitting you and like I'm not, making things up, but like there's always an opportunity to create change, right? So if something's not working the way it is, and like what you just described to me is like it should be illegal, right? In my humble opinion, like
I
who
do.
the hell is going to go out and do those things for what, right? Like why that's inviting that's slave labor, right?
It is, and I happen to agree with you on the position. I've been involved with, from pen stocks to turbines to ships,
Right.
pretty much anything under the sun that you can think of, right?
Mhm.
We've done, and we are very solid. Member of the Mechanical Contractors Association for all these years, have a union affiliation with all the unions in the West Coast,
Mhm.
and access to 312,000 tradespeople, right?
Okay.
But the problem is here that not only are they doing that, they're paying 87% of the time late. And they got a program where it's submitted into their program after the approval of the corporation,
Mhm.
and it takes another 30 days from that. So we could be waiting 115 to 6 months on a 30-day contract with these people, and they don't
So
change.
yeah, totally. So can I make a suggestion here?
Yeah,
Okay,
go
so
ahead.
I've experienced very similar things along my career. One, especially in the commercial, we did a lot of commercial roofing at one point. It sounds almost identical. Okay,
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
one of the things that you have to understand is that there's good players and bad players, right? You know who your ideal customer is, right? Like not
Right,
everybody does those things, correct?
right,
Okay.
right.
So the point here that I'm trying to make is that, the guys that pull those kind of moves should be put on your non-bid list. All right. And when we have conversations with them, yeah, they're getting fees. They're getting charges. Like you are actively telling them no, right? And like I said, the most profitable word that you can have in your vocabulary, especially like because if they're doing it to you, they're doing it to everyone, right? Just no one's had the courage to say no.
Well, no, actually, I had the meeting with the second in command at the Crown Corporation,
Yep.
and I voiced my opposition to them, saying that everybody sitting on the opposite side of the screen could have the same thing happen to them.
Hmm.
And I said, it's ridiculous that you think that we're going to be competitive against India or any other place that
Totally.
has done this when they're utilizing our expertise
Hmm.
throughout, asking us to do those submissions. And they said, well, maybe we have to bring this back to a lessons learned. And I said, well, no, that's not the position. I said, I have to reevaluate my considerations. We have a contract. We own that contract for the lower mainland
Hmm.
and, most of British Columbia. And you're turning around and giving it out, part of the prerequisite that we have native content, we have a core program, et
Right.
cetera. And we know that we're not going to be able to, it's $100,000 to put the core program together, right?
Yeah, I know all about core. Yeah.
And so all the way along, it's been, it's been difficult. And when chasing them down for their money, they say that you're difficult. When reality is that it's their responsibility, because at the end of the day, if we were to pay them late, we'd be paying interest. So
Mhm.
they refuse to pay the interest. They breach the contract terms, and if you don't like it, just beat
So
it. Basically, that's kind of where you're at, and that's not just that particular government agency. There's other ones, and I don't appreciate it. Right?
yeah, no, and again, that it sounds like you have all the reasons in the world to create some change for yourself immediately in your business, but to set the example for everyone else that's honestly coming in and doing this kind of work and being treated the same way. I mean, my position, and again, it's probably maybe not the popular one, is for me, there's always going to be more demand out there than can be filled, right? Like we're not in a scarce world, right? There's more opportunity in a 10-kilometer radius than most of us can ever imagine doing, right? So in your situation, have you thought about going, to the private sector where that's not an issue?
I don't mind going to the private sector. The problem
Okay.
is this is the other issue is getting paid from these people, right? So
Mm,
we did some natural gas compressor stations for this company for Iran.
yep.
And yeah, it was my first 4 or 5 years out, and it's bittersweet, right? Because on one hand we have the ASME certification, right?
Yep.
And what happened was the first check cleared and the rest bounced. Then they closed
Did
the
you do
company.
credit checks?
Yeah, I did that. They were good in the beginning, and then they went out and they sold the company to some other third party. They got us to sign some of the prerequisitions so that they could,
That's a
and
no-no
then
right
they took the
there.
money and
Yeah.
we were stung, 98 grand or 88 grand or whatever it was, and it was so they kept their closed down the international side and kept their original side and farmed the work out to Chilliwack. I mean, I wasn't as smart as I am now and business savvy, but this has happened a few times in the private sector.
Yeah, for
So
for sure.
it
So
it it, it makes you worry, and you try to handle it appropriately. You know, um, usually eventually I get paid. For this particular one I didn't, but that's just the way it is. So my thing is that we want to have the expertise to be able to provide them for the best value for their bucks. But at the end of the day, I find that most people don't play as fair as they should.
yeah,
Like,
and I totally listen. There's a good saying in commercial side of it. There's no rules, right? Like it's usually the bigger dog eats the smaller dog, right? But there are things you learn as a contractor if you've been through enough, and it sounds like you got plenty of wounds, plenty of wounds and
well,
bad experiences to realize this, right? Is that again at a certain point, you start picking your customers instead of them picking you, right? So again,
correct. But
you
but
have
but
to
but
be, yeah,
But at the end of the day, right, if you're servicing this customer to the full of your potential at the time with the manpower that you can get, which is difficult
you're
to
right.
get the expertise in the trades right now,
Yep.
it sets another boundary, right? So if they're your primary contractor, which they are, and they have
Hmm.
been for many, many years, then you try to cater to them. And then they end up relying upon you,
Hmm.
and you have expectations. And setting those emotions aside is one thing that most people should try to gather, in business.
For
But
sure.
we've got called up from guys like Peter Kiewit, right, years ago, and we did the turbines for the Mancomb River project, to run the river project.
Yeah.
And I've never done one turbine in my life, so I got the expertise together. I had it out by Monday morning,
Yeah.
which is extraordinary, right? It usually doesn't happen that way, but there are good things. I mean, we've done some extremely good work for people, and we just want to be treated fairly, and at the end of the day, make some extremely good money. I mean,
Right.
some of the guys that have come through me have their own businesses now, and,
Right.
and have been
Right.
successful, and that's what we're trying to create, right?
So let me ask you something. I mean, is this an opportunity? Like, what forces you into, accepting these things as they are? Like, what have you ever? And maybe even further to that question, have you ever like actually sat down and you said non-emotional, but have you ever actually gone through and scored your clients, like your
Oh, sure.
customers? You reported like, I mean, we use an ABCD system here, and like again, if somebody crosses me on any project, I don't care who they are, and we do big projects and stuff as well, but I mean, ultimately, there's an etiquette that you have to have in business, and that etiquette carries to the next and the next job. But if somebody is consistently a D client or a C client, then you have to also have the courage to say no, right? Like that's what it comes down to. And
Well, well,
believe
well,
me,
well,
there's
I had
yeah,
one of the guys that was a major player with this operation. I basically told him to beat it,
okay,
and it's cost us on the
okay,
interim basis. But I'm one guy that doesn't lack courageousness.
right,
If anything, I don't lack that at all.
right.
Um, I push forward, but I'll do everything I can to make sure things roll right. And if you look up our company, generally speaking, we have some pretty good reviews. So
Okay.
I don't know, at the end of the day, either if they're A, B, or C, or you grade them, whatever you want to grade them. What I do is generally keep track of if there's late payments or if there's other things that's gone on or they're just manipulative. I keep I keep that track of that kind of nonsense, right?
There's
And
more to it though than that, right? So like
sure,
just on their payment terms alone, like that, like again, if they're a government, like they're scheduled for 90 days, 120 days, but there's more to it, right? Like you got to look at
no,
profit.
we have a contract.
Yeah,
The terms of the contract are 30 days,
right.
period.
And then they break them.
And they break them. Not only break them, they have a system that says it has to be approved.
Hmm.
And then once the system starts up, then they start the 30 days.
It's got to be on the 25th and all. Yeah, no, I know all about that.
No, it's not that. They've got a system. I shouldn't disclose, but they got a system called Ariba. I don't know if you ever heard of it.
Okay.
But these guys will take them 60 to 90 days to get their stuff together.
Hmm.
Even when we've gone through the quality control management and everything else and shown them the drawings and they've passed everything and the NDT is done and whatever else, right?
Yep.
It's all completed. Then they're supposed to have no later than 30 days to pay that bill, right? That's the rule of law.
Mhm.
What happens, do you think, if you were to take a Crown Corporation? You sound like a smart guy.
Mhm.
If you were to take a Crown Corporation and say, hey, you owe us, this. What they do then, they just don't deal with you. Second matter is that they consecutively do that to everybody now, and unfortunately, it's gotten worse.
Right.
Um,
So the only thing that's going to change that, my man, and again, you're describing something that is, again, it's going on and has been going on for forever. But there
no,
are
no, not forever, but the last few years, generally the last few years,
right.
they've set up systems. And most of these people that are employees, they get a regular paycheck. They can, care less about the contractor. And, you voice them. I mean, we've had jobs that, that's been 6 months, which
Right.
is ridiculous, right? And
Right.
until a project manager says, hey, take care of these guys, or there's going to be trouble. We won't be, because I've said to them, 87% of the time you guys are late.
Mhm.
Right. So either straighten it out. I said I wouldn't have one of my suppliers giving me any supplies at the end of the day if I did the same thing you guys do. So,
Right.
you know,
So again, those are big barriers, but you have to ask yourself, like, is this helping you grow your business? Because what it sounds to me, and I've been there, dude. I understand exactly where you're coming from, but what they are actually doing is keeping you locked into them, right? They're keeping leverage on you, right? And the reason for is again, why do contractors slow down payments or not make payments?
right. Amongst other things. That's all
Yeah,
I got to say.
so you finance their job and they don't have any, they're in an overbilled situation all the time. So they're paying themselves first and then letting everybody else get paid as things come in.
Well, no,
Right.
and they're manipulating you.
Totally.
The one guy particularly yeah, he was doing some stuff that was quite illegal.
Listen, I've been around the block a few times. You know that what stopped it for me, and I'll be honest with you. I'll be full disclosure on this. Probably about 10 years ago, 80% of our work was commercial. Okay.
Right.
And we were doing, government projects, we did army bases, we did all that stuff. So, but here's what I realized very quickly. And, early on, I was a younger guy back then, is that in order for me to actually succeed and have something to show for all of this, all right, when you start to calculate it, let's say I want to do $1 million worth of work in that sector with those terms. Okay. I basically need to have 500,000 liquidable cash sitting there. All right. Now, what happens through this whole process? Does your profit margins not get eroded?
Well, I've been at this 25 years, so I'm not a poor guy by any
No,
means.
it's not about that though.
But yeah, do my profit margins get eroded? Absolutely. And
right.
you know what the fact is, when there's delays on drawings and things to that nature, it ties up our shop, right?
Right.
And and out here in the West Coast, you're paying, for a 16,000 square foot shop, you're paying $32,000 a month,
But I
right?
get it.
And if you get that, your profit's gone, right?
So let me ask you again another question. If you had a lineup of private sector clients that were willing to give you let's say even a deposit up front for these things, how would that change your position? Would you continue to take on that work or or not?
Well, I'm obligated by law to take on the work till the contract is finished, right? So I have to keep up my end,
Right.
no matter what,
But
because if
let's
we
just
don't,
say hypothetically that again, you had a lineup in more opportunity in the private sector, all right, where people were paying deposits up front, maybe not as high margin or protected, but at the end of the day, you were cash flow positive. Would you take that opportunity, or would you take the one you're in now?
if I had a deposit, I would be okay with that. Yeah,
Okay. So then
absolutely.
so
Yeah.
then you do have decisions. You do have choices.
I do, but the point is we're still catering to the client, and the amount of estimates that we have to produce is phenomenal, and the paperwork is phenomenal.
Okay,
So
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 back to what we're talking about this whole time then. If you're just giving out quotes and you're not building relationships with people and solving problems outside of, what's been spec'd, all right? Um, where do you expect to go with it?
well, again, that's the issue, right? So we're well known in the industry, like extremely
Sure.
well known. So um, we're in demand, right? We're hoping that things will correct themselves. But again, it was a long discussion with my engineer that if this is a nonsense that we're going to be putting up with, I'm not going to be working with. I have to make that decision. Again, I'm towards the last 5 years of my career,
Right.
right, and passing the torch on to somebody else that will carry on sort of the legacy and the relationship. I was offered a lot of money for the business and I turned it down.
Right.
So again, I have to make some decisions, and those will be my decisions. But at the end of the day, when you're trying to service both, it makes it difficult because I have a binding contract.
Sure. So, I mean, I get that you have work in the pipeline, and I understand that completely. But again, at the end of the day, if you're if you're trying to look at a business that's, it sounds like it's just chewing up cash, it's, not producing the results that you expect. And I mean, eventually it's going to, obviously erode that EBITDA that you should be right now, trying to drive the hardest if you're looking to make an exit, right? Like exit in mind. If you don't balance out like the thing, no one buys a cash broke business. And I mean, you may have money that you're putting into it. That's not what I'm saying, but no one buys, a business that has backlog of terms that are 90 to 120 days, right?
Well,
If they do, like venture capital, I should say, doesn't come in and buy those businesses like a competitor might.
yeah, I was offered venture capitalist in the beginning of and they wanted the majority of the shares, so I didn't go that way.
Hmm.
So we're so established, even if we were, say, running into, you're talking about the EBITDA, right, for the finances for a couple of years, it wouldn't be a critical path because right now, with the certification alone is worth a ton of cash, just
Hmm.
the certification and the assets of the company.
Sure.
So, would somebody want to pick it up? Absolutely, but it has to be again the right person that's going to manage it. So I have some emotional attachment as well as a business
It sounds like it.
attachment
Yeah.
to it, and 25 years is a long time, right?
It certainly is. It certainly is.
So we want to be successful. I want to hand it over to the right people,
Right.
but at the same time, if I ruin the relationship I have by forcing my hand, then at the end of the day, that won't look very good as one of the sale options with the company, right?
Yeah. But
So
are
it's
you
it's
looking to
a, it's
leave?
a, it's a, it's a thin line. Yeah, I am because I had some injuries there. I just had cracked a couple of ribs about 3 weeks ago.
Uh-oh.
So do I want to? I mean, I was hit by a drunk driver
Oh,
um,
wow.
a while ago and did some damage to my right arm,
Okay.
serious damage. And it took me a good couple of years to put myself back together, and I still kept on going. So
Hmm.
reality is that I don't fall short of striving for what's in the best interest of myself and maybe myself, but the corporation for the business side of
For
things.
sure.
I've been downsized of an industry I spent 15 or 16 years with,
Right.
and I took it on to say that I would never let that happen again. So, some of us are luckier than others.
Hmm.
Some of us have a little more than others, but I think if you don't quit and you know, invest in yourself and you work hard at it, that generally you succeed. Something will fall in your lap that will make it right, right? And
Certainly,
that's my vision.
certainly. Yeah, no, I respect that. I can totally appreciate that. And again, you know, it sounds like you've already made your choices and decisions on these kind of matters, right? So like, you know, you just can't go into the same situation hoping for a better outcome, right? So if it's not what you want it to be, at a certain point you have to try something different, right?
Well, I agree that's the way you have to. It sounds a lot easier to say than it is
Oh,
in,
for
in
sure, but
reality, and
that's you just
it's
explained
much
it though. You
easier to
have to
say.
grind it out and be tough, right? You have
You,
to.
you, you have to have that personality, right?
That's for sure.
You know, even
None of
you
it's
know,
easy,
the educational side. A lot of people are engineers and things like that, and
right?
you know they have their documentation. You know, I'm a journeyman tradesman. I have some business degrees, right,
Hmm.
and other things. But you know, if you break loose and hurt a large contract, it can come back to bite you. And that's, you know, it's not a matter of being afraid, it's a matter of reality.
Yeah,
And you have to
yeah, no,
accept
and
those things.
I think I align with you on that. I'm curious to know, like, you know, if you have other, like, if you were working actively on building other opportunities for yourself, like what damage would that do? Like at this point in your business, if you at least had the option, right? And you were putting your, you know, on, let me just give you a good example in this particular niche. You know, it's a relationship building, right? You want
Right.
to, you know, you want to be considered, you know, the top expertise. You want to work towards those ones where there is no bid, right? Where they're just calling you in because they trust you, right? That doesn't
Right.
happen in the public sector, right? That's not allowed to happen in the public sector. So
No, you're sort of correct on that.
you get unfair advantages, like they tell you about the spec. You can know the engineers. You can have a job where you know very few people are going to bid on it, and that you are niched out. Yes, but at the end of the day, right? You're still in a very controlled environment, right? Like no one's letting you become, you know, to have your way. Like you don't have any leverage, and that's the way that those
Wow.
contracts have always been built.
Do,
Always been built.
does any of us really have any leverage? I mean, so
Not
to
in
speak.
that, not in those situations, but again, when you start to, and it sounds like you already have before, but like when you pick a certain niche in the public, and I've had to do it myself. I went from commercial roofing, very much what you're describing. Like I was all union, you know, we were locked in. We were told what we would, you know, be charging. All of our labor was locked in. Like there was, like I competed on nickels and dimes, right? And now as a smaller contractor, you cannot like they made it so that you know that anyone coming in is not able to be successful because you could never get the volume, right? So my answer to that was okay, I've rode this path and I did for over a decade.
Mhm.
I've gotten somewhere but not where I want to be.
Mhm.
What can I do that will still allow me to compete in this market, but will, you know, allow me to also have another market in case I'm not liking and I can say no to things. Because the worst is when you have to say yes, right? The worst is
Well,
when you don't want to do something, but you know you need to for, you know, to put food on the table for your staff. And when you have a business at a certain point, all
right.
right, it goes beyond you, right? It doesn't matter what you feel or think. It comes down to, you know, if you don't maintain, everything you work for goes the other way, right? So for me, that's the leverage I'm referring to. Is that, you
So,
know,
so,
I want to be
so
able to
you,
say, yeah.
so being in the roofing industry, you must have had clients that said, you know, if you're not doing this, you're not going to get paid.
I still do to this day. What do you mean? That
Uh,
never goes away. That doesn't
yeah,
change.
but have you had a client that's been rude in front of your family to meeting in front of your employees and things like that? Have you ever had that?
Absolutely, and I fire them immediately if I can, right?
That's
And
what I did.
yeah,
Yeah,
so again, those are no-brainer. Like that comes down to your core values, right? Like,
right.
you know, again,
So,
if you're not prepared to stand by your core value and you don't let anybody cross that boundary, I don't care, $1 million, like we're not like again, that is the absolute like definition of slave, right?
well, that's the position this guy was putting me in, right?
Sure.
And I cut him loose.
Yeah,
And
that's the
we were doing $2-3 million a year with him,
doesn't
right?
matter how much money you're making with them.
And I just said to him that was it.
Yeah, and
And
that's the
my
right decision.
employees, you know, how rude he was, just couldn't even take it. They just couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
And that's it. I said to him, you know, and it went on even further than that. but that's in the sum of it. That's where I said I got to draw the line.
Right.
My mental health and my integrity is much more important than trying to keep this, contractor
Totally.
appeased, right? And I'm not going to allow that kind of behavior.
Totally.
So,
So
yeah,
again, it sounds like this whole market, to be honest with you, you just sound bored of it. I don't know what else to tell you, but like you sound like
you
you've been
know,
just doing the same thing for too long that it's
I,
that
I, I,
short-sighted.
I can tell you, my industry, there's
Mhm.
never a boring day.
Okay.
Reality, I'm in a lot of pain.
Yeah.
That's my shortfall right now. That I can't, that with these injuries, it's been difficult. Now
Gotcha.
to find someone to appropriately manage it, I just haven't found that staff yet. So
Totally understand that.
and so we're into a spot where it's a little difficult.
Mhm.
It's quite a bit difficult, and you know with the amount of tradespeople that I can get, I don't think there'll be value at the end of the day charging. I have an engineer working with me that we have on staff, and then I have a sub engineer.
Mhm.
So the issue is, how much long do I, because time's a commodity we don't get back, and how much more time do I spend trying to do the right thing and passing it on, the legacy
Mhm.
and the good business, or do I start to look after myself and cut it loose, right? Because I'm
Those
not a
are
quitter.
those are tough questions, my friend. So,
Yeah,
if you're interested, I may have some expertise that might help you with these decisions. Book a call, and maybe we can chat about it more privately.
yeah,
And there's a lot that goes into making those things, and I've been through some things as well that I can share with you. And if anything, at least helps you see it from another perspective. And that's usually how we make decisions, right?
right. One of my first jobs I used to work for was a place called OB Roofing out in Richmond, British Columbia,
Okay.
and it was splitting those hot tar kegs
Oh yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
doing the flat roofing. They wanted to hire me full time. I ended up with sunstroke, and that was enough for me.
yeah.
And I just about fell off a roof. So
It's okay. Not too many Canadians do this kind of work anymore. So there's very
well,
few Canadians that are capable of it, especially with hot tar and gravel. And not, like I would say, in my business and even back then, you know, we didn't have very many Canadians that were capable of managing the heat on there.
yeah, it's a tough job, right?
It is brutally tough, right? And again,
Yeah,
it takes a certain type of person, right? And that's what establishes you too, when you can align the right people with the right jobs.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Probably the hardest worker they'll have on the crew when I was younger, but definitely not.
You're
You
not
know,
Portuguese. You're not 5'5" and pure
ah,
muscle, right? I
well,
lived
I agree.
lived in
I
those
agree.
temperatures.
Yeah, they just want to, make a paycheck. But out here in the West Coast, you know how high it is. I mean, I'm sitting on a
Yeah,
property now that's worth a lot of money, right?
yeah,
And that's where, no matter what, that was the big save. It was the fact that I invested in property.
that's good.
So, I just want to, at the end of the day, make sure that I've got the quality of the staff in play before I go, and that they're all making a good living. And at the end of the day, I want to make sure that the people come with better people, better tradesmen, and that's the niche of my
Right
market,
on,
right?
right on.
So yeah, but by all means, you got my number there, I think, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Call me sometime. We can discuss. I would, if your expertise is roofing, maybe I can pass on your name to a couple of people and help
yeah.
you out a
No, we
bit.
don't
But
do roofing out there, but I
okay,
appreciate
or
that.
where are you from? Sorry,
We're in Ontario.
Ontario.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Cool. Very
So
good.
okay, well,
Yeah.
thank you for your time, sir. Is there any helpful hints that you want to give to me on the way out, or?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think at least exploring the opportunity to diversify your market. At the end of the day, like it sounds to me, and I'm just gonna call it, I don't really care, but like you have a sales and marketing issue more than you have any other circumstance. Like we still have the power to say no, and there's other markets, I know it, like
Mhm.
you can go other places and be just as successful if, especially with your level of experience and respect in the industry. And it's going to be somebody like you saying F you that will change the industry. If you want to leave a legacy behind, that's how you do it, right? You stop the abuse that's very obviously occurring. And guess
Right.
what? There is a limit, there's a finite amount of expertise out there, and it's getting smaller and smaller, right? So you are the prize, you are in demand, despite what they present to you. It again, usually when that's happening, it's because they're afraid of losing power, right? So like, don't let people exert power over you. It's
Well,
not
you
not
know,
worth it.
I walked into the meeting the other day because I was, I had some issues. I had like a couple of broken ribs, and
Yeah,
and this other engineer, like the engineer we have is probably the best engineer that we've had in 25 years. He's fantastic, right?
okay.
A really knowledgeable guy. Ask questions, even if the information isn't provided by the engineer, it's supposed to give it to him. And the guy was just trying to be extremely rude. I walked into that meeting and shut him down within about 3 seconds. So I have a bit of a gift for that, right?
Yeah, it sounds like it.
But the other thing is that I really want to make sure that before I go that everything's lined up.
Yeah,
And we do have a good operation. In Ontario, things are much cheaper, living expenses, companies,
yeah,
corporations to run. And I have some fear with the fact that the interprovincial level now too, as well as going out overseas, is being discarded, right?
right. Well,
So
again, this is your like if you're at that level in your business, you can win on both sides. So you can increase EBITDA, you can increase diversity, right? And again, if you don't have to sell to venture capital, you can sell to somebody that's a good, hardworking person that's going to have those values, right? Because if you go with capital, they don't give a shit. They're gonna strip that company down and leverage it for everything it's worth, right? So I'm
right.
I'm my fear in my business and the legacy I don't want to leave is selling to capital. But like at a certain point where what options do you have to turn to if you don't build a business that can be operated without you, right? Without, anything else. And again, at a certain point with capital as well, is they don't want businesses that are 100% successful, right? They don't want good operating business. They want ones with big problems that they have the answers to fix, right? So you're never getting your value when you sell to them.
Right. A lot of people, especially when they're making a lot of money, they'll look for businesses that have losses. And
That's
I've done
what we
that
do.
before.
That's exactly what that's what do you think we're doing right now? What do you think
Right.
we're
And exactly. Well, I mean, I was trying to buy this company out that was a supplier, right? So I was going to
Yeah.
branch out a bit to be a supply
Uh-huh.
as well as the trades. So in the beginning, my onset, I had an idea to run all the trades, separate them all into separate buildings, right? And supply all the parts that were needed. So it would be a turnkey, right? With a
Yeah.
couple of head office guys and the way you went. Um, uh, you know, things in my mind were much easier than they actually are. Easy to
Right.
say. So right now I'm working on a design that will create power. So the design that I'm working on won't be with wind or sun.
Yeah.
And I've been working on this. I had this idea for about 25, 30 years, but it's the first time I've applied it. So after that gets done, I think we'll be set because they can't do anything. Nobody
Yeah,
can.
the crazy thing about it, like I'm assuming that you've looked into how businesses are being sold right now. Right now is like again the only place they have to go. If you look at the way that everything has been consolidated, is
Mhm.
into the trades, right? So and like it's writings on the wall. They did it with real estate. They did it with everything else. Like we're under huge pressure from capitals because we've put their franchises out of business and stuff. So like we've got a big target on our back, and I've learned a lot about how to build your exit, right? So the thing is, in this game that I'm finding is that they're trying to run your value down, right? Because in the next 10 years, 15 years, what's your company going to be worth,
Oh, ah,
right?
I mean,
Astronomical. You're like
yeah, I can
and they
tell you
know
right.
right now, they
Yeah,
know right now that most baby boomers, Gen Xers, like they're all getting ready for that retirement. And when they all go to the exit, that's the people holding these businesses, right? So for every 11, only one's going to sell, right?
yeah,
With that in
no,
mind, they're sitting there like vultures looking for the bathwater or to give someone a low exit. So you're right in your strategy and looking at other assets you can acquire. I don't agree with bringing them into your business. You should never do that. You should do what venture capital does, If you see a business that's in trouble, or if your supplier lets you know of a business you can acquire for bathwater, I call it. All
Yeah.
right. That's ugly on paper. That doesn't have anything. A lot of times you can make these deals where you're letting the owner exit. All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And then what you do is you can leverage, you can go put a bunch of debt against it, put your systems in if you're organized. All right.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
let that business grow independent. Don't even tell people you own it. Don't even tell people what you have, what you like got going. I learned that a long time ago.
Yeah.
Don't you just let them sit. Let them work, do their thing. Either they sink or swim. It's not a liability to you because you're leveraging that business with obviously a no liability corporation.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you go to exit, instead of just exiting with year one, let's say you've got a 20% EBITDA, you're going to get a 3x return or whatever,
Mhm.
or 3 or 4 multiplier. When you pull in those other companies, if you choose to, all right, and you put them under your umbrella, guess what? All of them come with the same multiplier as yours.
Right.
That's
And
the
like,
that's the trick in this game, is that I can now take 5 companies, amalgamate them in overnight. And you're seeing it all happen all over the place right now. Like you
Yeah.
just mentioned in the earlier about the Iranians, and like they sold the company. Like, do you know how many of these companies are getting flipped, and then like it's just like real estate, right?
Yeah, yeah. So it is, right? But you have to have an expertise in the industry to be able to make sure you know what you're buying, at the end
Well,
of the day.
that goes without saying.
And you have to also, just like the old saying goes, when the cards are so close to the sleeve, it's hard to play the game. The more you
Mhm.
talk, the worse it is. And that's what people have a problem about, right? They talk too much,
Absolutely. It's all speculation.
right? And so, I'm in a good position, very good position. I've worked hard for it. But I have to, again, try to remedy the situation on the interim basis, right?
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
thanks for your time, though. I really appreciate some of your input, and
Yeah.
perhaps we can help each other. That's what I'm
Yeah.
thinking.
We'll talk again. Take care.
Okay.